Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story, where each weekday we offer a brief lesson from a section of today's reading from the one-year Bible, and we examine some questions that extend our learning from the sermon on Sunday. Today I'm joined by Sheryl Daughety and Wendy Korbusieski, and we're looking at a passage from Proverbs 9, 7 and 8. So let me read that. It says, "Anyone who rebukes a mocker will get an insult in return. Anyone who corrects the wicked will get hurt. So don't bother correcting mockers. They will only hate you, but correct the wise. They will love you." So we've been talking a lot about conflict resolution this week. And I can't think of anything that creates conflict any quicker than offering someone else correction.
That is facts. But what I notice about these two verses is that it's kind of a catch-22. You can't win kind of thing. It's like you should know the difference between a mocker and a wise person, and to know whether you can offer them correction. But the Proverbs indicates that the way you can distinguish between a person who's a mocker and a person who is wise is how they receive the correction. So the catch-22 is you should not correct a mocker, but you don't know if somebody's a mocker until you correct them. It's like, so, the chicken and the egg is, you can't win.
So what's the solution?
Well, the whole of what we would call wisdom literature does give us some practical pointers for this, which is partially about discernment, and discernment takes time. A person's character is usually revealed to us in a gradual way, not suddenly, because we see that through their actions, their words, their responses to life challenges, and things like that. Proverbs 20:11 says, "Even a child makes himself known by his acts, whether his conduct is pure and upright." Over time, people will reveal their disposition toward wisdom or folly because of a consistent behavioral pattern toward those things. And on the other hand, a scoffer also has a predictable pattern. Proverbs 21:24 says they mock. Proverbs 13:1 says they reject advice. Proverbs also tells us that they cause strife. And when you do correct them, their rejection of that correction is usually accompanied by some sort of retaliation or insult. How could you even suggest such a thing? In contrast to this, a wise person is identified by his openness to correction, readiness to learn, from a mistake or correction, and which is humility. And Proverbs 1:5 tells us, "Let the wise hear and increase in learning." Proverbs 15:31 says, "The ear that listens to life-giving reproof will dwell among the wise."
Let me give some practical kind of guidance from the Bible that might help us here. One, I would suggest you start small. Offer gentle guidance, initially. See how the person responds to it. A wise person is going to engage constructively. A scoffer is going to dismiss it. They're going to ridicule it. Secondly, don't force it. If someone repeatedly reacts negatively to correction, it may indicate they have a scoffer-like attitude. Wisdom is knowing when to stop. So if you're going to be wise, you need to go. I can't keep pressing in here. And then 3, invest where it counts. So the wise are going to welcome correction, right? They're going to grow from it, and it's going to make them better. And I think we have to be intentional about tilling good soil. Spending our time where there is going to be some return. So, what steps? How can you take? How do you initially build a relationship with somebody so you can discover what kind of person they are?
Just watching and listening is usually a really good place to start, because it's a pretty easy and accurate way to learn who a person is over time if you're paying attention. And I think it's pretty easy through that process to see whether or not what a person does follows up with what they say, whether or not somebody lives with humility, I really do think it's a relational thing. It's something that you're, and I'm not saying that this is something you have to go into with it's like they're underneath your ridicule and inspection. But I do think that if you're paying attention, it becomes obvious, especially over time, because as we said earlier, there's a pattern. There's a pattern you start to see.
I think a really good way is like if you're in a small group with them, or if you're working on a project with somebody, or on a team or an assignment with somebody, it's a really quick way to figure out which of the two categories that person falls into. Can they take direction? Are they a good listener? Do they always have to be right? Are they leaning in to conversations, or are they kind of shutting down during conversation? Do they interrupt conversations? Those kind of things I'm looking at, I'm watching, I'm paying attention to, because they say a lot about a person's character. And are they the wise or the mocker?
Yeah, I think, watching and listening are clearly easy ways to do it, participating. I think finding, there's an old joke that if you want to find out somebody's character, take them to play golf. That maybe there's a lot of truth in that, but I do think that there are some basic activities that you can do with people that you can quickly find out whether they are teachable or unteachable, whether they're trying to grow and learn. It can be basic things. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be some project even, I think, but there are just basic things that you can do together. You go to a ball game together. Just so many basic things that you can do to do that, and and even more in depth. I think some of it then even becomes, since we're here, and it's one of the things that I think we have worked really hard at here on our staff, and that is critically important, is that you continue to learn more about one another, so that it's not just, do I offer correction, but am I offering correction in a way that they can receive it? Because everybody,
right.
Everybody receives. I did a funeral today, and so if you're watching, you're wondering why I'm in a dress shirt. The lady that I did the funeral for, she was 95, and probably one of the last funerals I'll do at that church, because most of them have died off at this point. There's maybe a couple more I would do in the next 20, 30 years. But she was, I would put her in the top 4 or 5 most blunt people I have ever dealt with in my entire life. Just right, and I talked about it. I had been holding a couple of one of the stories I tell in Growth Track about her every time, about her inviting her sister and saying, "You're in my seat," but she was just so, man, right there, Now, for me, one of the reasons why, so I hadn't been her pastor for 25 years, and when I left, I didn't leave in a good situation, right? But one of the reasons why I'm doing her funeral, I did her funeral today, is because I didn't take great offense to that, right? But that's my personality makeup. You can say pretty much whatever you want to. I would rather you front load it and punch me in the mouth than, me have to sit through 30 minutes of honey dripping, for you to eventually tell me,
right.
Oh, this is rotten, to say it. But everybody's not that way, right? And so one of the keys to this piece, sometimes they're not a scoffer or a mocker. Sometimes they do want to learn, but you have offended them because you took the wrong approach, right, on the front side. And I think that building that relationship so you kind of know them and you get a feel for them, and not be aggressive, And that's difficult for me, right? I have to really work at that piece. So if you're a person that needs me to slide into it, work my way up to it, that's a real challenge for me. And so, but I think we've put in a lot of effort here to try to overcome some of that, to get better at it. So it's not always scoffer and mocker situation.
Right.
Sometimes it's just temperament.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I love my life group so much, because our life group the title of our life group is Bible and Board Games. So after we do Bible study, the requirement is we have to play a game before we leave. So that's part of our time together, is that game time. So the person you see in study time is not the person you see in game time. So it's a whole nother dimension to relationship.
Yeah, like ruthless singing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly who just
That's exactly right.
I called Ruth Ann out right here.
I know she's listening to. We are calling you out.
It's so much fun though to see just the different level of personality, the different, who you are on a different level, and it helps build those relationships.
Wisdom is developed in community. As a matter of fact, I just finished a book. I referenced it last week, and it's probably going to be a highly recommended book. It's not an overly spiritual book, even though it has lots of spiritual undertones, by a guy named David Brooks. It's called The Second Mountain. And it closes with this. He spends a lot of the end of the book with this manifesto about community and how certain things are only developed in community. And one of the things he talks about is wisdom is only developed in community, right? It's this collective. It's not an individuality. But in America, we are overly individualistic and getting more so by the day. Do you think that hinders our ability to develop wisdom here in our nation?
Yes, I believe that it does. I think it's for multiple reasons, one of which would be obvious, in that we are not spending as much physical time together to talk, to watch, to listen, to learn from the people who have wisdom that we need. But I also think another danger that we may not even think about outside of that is the fact that we have so much available to us. We have every book, we have every kind of social media that you can think of. You can find something to support any opinion that you have. And it's easy for us to say, oh, this person is so smart and so wise, and I'm gonna read it, I'm gonna do everything this person says, but you don't know that person in real life. It could be all empty or really bad advice and wisdom. It may not be wise at all. But because you are not living in personal relationship with that person, it's really hard for you to know. So I think that's almost more confusing place that we're in with that right now.
Some of the most valuable lessons I've learned ever have been with family or extended family or communities that considered me family. That I was able to feel comfortable to make mistakes, because that's like the best teacher ever. Things that you can't learn in books or on the internet, these life skills that are going to be lost, that you could only do in community, relationship things that you can only learn in community. And in our bubbles that we create now, we lose that. Yeah. We've just become kind of isolated, and sometimes the anonymity that those bubbles provide give us the freedom sometimes to say and do things that we would otherwise never do.
Not do in a community.
Right.
Yeah.
And it gets scary, dangerous almost.
Yeah.
It is. Knowing character is difficult to establish instantly. It's done more over long term. Why is it so hard for us to do? Why? And character isn't about perfection either, right? while y'all talk, I'm going to try to think of the illustration that somebody gave recently, but it was like, yeah, no, that's wrong. But yeah, you're right. They were more right than the other person. And I'll have to think about what it was. It was a fantastic illustration. But why is it so difficult for us to stick to long-term engagements to try to learn people's character?
Because more than dollars and cents, our most valuable commodity is time. And nobody, or fewer and fewer people, are willing to bargain with that chip. They don't want to give it away. They don't want to give it up. They want to invest it. They like to spend it on themselves. And as harsh as this is going to sound harsh, we're just become very, very selfish people.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very selfish people.
Well, and I was going to say that it's almost a lack of wisdom on your own part when you don't think that it's worth it. I know a particular thing that's coming to my mind, and I'm sure all of us are of the age that you can relate to this. I think back to some wisdom that my grandparents died with that I so wish I knew now, but I was not wise enough at the time to know I need to learn that. I need to sit down and listen to what it is they're trying to teach me.
And now it's lost.
Yes. I did get some of that, but as an adult, the stuff that I didn't appreciate then are things now that I just look back and love about my grandparents so much, and I miss them and wish that my kids and my husband had known them. And I just think about all the different ways that they just, like the wisdom that they used and the way they handled their relationships and their resources and their finances and just how well they loved people.
But one of the things that, and I'm older than both of you, but it's not like I'm light years. We're all in the
really
same
close,
generation, I'm
Mhm.
guessing. One of the things that I am learning to appreciate today is that much of what you saw didn't come until that last.
That's right.
It was that might have been all you lived, right? You know, it's
to the latter part of their life.
Yeah, I was.
Which is kind of where we should be headed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I was we talked about it on a podcast a few weeks back with Jay and Alyssa were in here, but I was having this conversation with my son the other day. My grandkids have a completely different experience with me as a person
Oh, yeah.
than my kids did.
Mhm.
A completely different experience. They see much more of the wisdom, right, that you're talking about with your grandparents. Your parents probably didn't have that same feel for your parents, right? Because you got the tail, I think the long tail is from statistics would be what it was called, so you get to this point, you're getting this long piece. But it's a longevity thing, right? That's one of the things that I think are true in marriage. There are things that are true of my marriage today that I would say could not have been true 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It was impossible.
Yeah.
The longevity of it has allowed us to be able to escape. Now, how you capture that and then apply that, I don't know. I think that we could be better. One of the things, gosh, this is going to turn into some weird rant. Probably is what it feels like. I grew up thinking that the wise thing or the way you established your identity and who you were and those kind of things was that you went and established your own life and you separated yourself from your family and you created this identity.
all on your own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what I am seeing, what I see the value of today, and I see this. There's this wrestling match I see happening in my kids' life, right? And what I would like them, what I really want to say is, if you hang around, I don't mean if you'll hang around me, but if you'll stay close by, and your mom, and you allow those relationships to blossom over a long period of time, what you're going to find is things that you cannot get on your own, because you can't get that depth of relation. You can't go recreate that depth of relationship somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You can establish your identity,
Right.
but you lose the value of that collective wisdom that comes from close-knit families. And I see families who do it way better than I ever did, and my parents live fairly close by, and our ministry just required us to split up. That was what happened. But I see there is value in a much tighter knit community where collective wisdom can be passed along and grown, and you see it lived out more than it is from a distance. That's what I would say.
I had an aunt pass away just recently, and I had made a post about it that, at my age, when we're going through, it's just that season of life when they're just reaching that age and they're starting to pass away, and that when you're going to these funerals, it becomes more like a family reunion. But when you walk into those spaces and you've grown up in those tight-knit communities, those close families like that, growing up, we did everything together. This was my mom's family, and there was not a holiday that we weren't all together. There were 10 of us cousins. My mom was one of 6 siblings, and there were 10 cousins, and we did everything together. We were our friends. We were our best friends. And so we have so many shared memories from the time we could remember remembering until now adulthood, until the patriarch of the family passed and we quit spending holidays together, until that, we have so many shared memories, and then we still keep in touch, so that when we come together for the things like this funeral, it's like we never skipped a beat. And so it's the value of that community, is like all of these shared experiences. It's like we never left a day, and that we just find so much comfort, even in events like a funeral, just coming together. It's like, oh, it's so good to see you. And you almost felt guilty that it was a happy occasion to be all together again, because it was exactly that. It was that depth of relationship that you just could not recreate in any other.
It doesn't happen by accident.
No, and I hate that for my kids who didn't have all those cousins that spent every holiday. Now, at the time, I was like, can't we do something else at Christmas other than go to Papa's house and have to spend every single. But now, on the backside of that, what a gift.
Yeah.
What a gift.
I would agree with that. Well, thank you for joining us today on this edition of One Single Story. We hope you'll be back with us tomorrow as we continue a conversation around our daily Bible reading from the One Year Bible.